So welcome everybody to today's regular council meeting, April 26th, 2021 at 1 p.m. I'll call today's meeting to order and let's jump right in. Are there any added items for today's agenda? Sorry, council sort of scattered when everybody else came in, but seeing none, I'd take a motion for adoption of the agenda. Councillor Harper.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I move the adoption of the agenda for Monday, April the 26th, 2021, as circulated.
All right, thank you. Comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? Motion is carried. All right, let's move along to adoption of previous minutes. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the minutes from the April 12th, 2021, 1 p.m. regular council meeting be adopted as presented.
Excellent. Comments, questions, concerns regarding that motion? Errors, omissions in the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? And opposed? Motion is carried. All right, let's move right along into presentations and delegations. So first up here, we have our delegation from our auditor for our financial statements. So just as a matter of process, I'll let Mr. Merritt introduce, and then we will do our public portion of the presentation. And then, as is traditional, we go into a closed session to talk with the auditor directly regarding any processes or anything like that. So I'll divert to CAO and I'll let him introduce.
Well, thank you, Your Worship, and I'll defer the introductions to Director Linderman, but I do want to reiterate that the initial part of this discussion is for public to hear about the financial statements, but the letters to management and the post-audit letter should be done in a closed session and an opportunity to ask other specific questions, which council can determine who is going to remain from the executive team.
Excellent.
So I'll ask Director Linderman to introduce Darren and anybody else who may be speaking.
So yeah, today we have Darren Adamson here from Avail, and he is here to present our 2020 financial statements. And Darren, I think you have a presentation you wanted to share.
Yeah, ahead. I do. I have a PowerPoint that I was hoping to share, so I'll just share my screen here as soon as, or I guess I'll do that now if you're done. Okay, thanks, Sheena. I'm just going to try to share my screen here now. I think this should be. Okay, does that work? Can you see the slideshow?
It's a little small, but
I think it's in presenter mode.
Oh, okay.
If you go to display settings.
Is that better?
there we go.
Okay.
Now too big.
Yeah. No, that's so now can you see it says what we'll cover? I know I've been having a little bit of trouble with my headset too, so let me know if the volume or if the audio doesn't work very good. But so what I'm proposing to cover today is, instead of actually going through the actual financial statements, what I thought I'd do is just kind of take some snips from the actual financial statements, what I think are the highlights, some snips from the indicators of financial condition, and then if we go in camera, some snips from the actual letters. So rather than going through each one, I just kind of thought I'd cover the highlights. So hopefully that works. So some of the things we'll cover from the financial statements, one is the independent auditor's report, obviously. We'll cover some of the financial results highlights, some of the notes to the financial statements. There's a lot of notes and they're all good information, but I do have a few that I wanted to highlight. Some indicators of financial condition, and just as a reminder, those are the 5-year graphs that we have that we present every year, where we can compare the town's 5-year trend, and you can also compare that to comparable towns in the province. The management letter in camera and the post audit letter in camera. So if that's fine, anything else that you wanted to talk about, just let me know. So the independent auditor's report included in there is, it's a clean auditor's opinion, as we would expect. We wouldn't expect anything different at this point in the game. So in our opinion, the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with the Canadian Public Sector Accounting Standards. So no surprises there. The auditor's report does go through the various responsibilities. So management itself is responsible for the financial statements, and Sheena has looked at the statements and management and given us feedback, and we've made any changes that they felt were necessary. Council obviously is responsible to oversee management and do the formal approval of the financial statements once everything's been gone through and everybody agrees to it. And then as auditors, we're responsible for doing our audit, and part of that is identifying and assessing the risks of material misstatement. So we focus our audit efforts on areas that have a greater risk of material misstatement. We need to understand the internal controls. We need to evaluate the policies and estimates, conclude on the going concern assumption, and evaluate the presentation of the financial statements. So once we've done all that, then we're in the position to provide our opinion. And our opinion is that these financial statements are fairly presented. So getting into some of the actual numbers. So the statement of operations. So the revenues for the year, this year about 24.5 million, up a little bit over last year. But
Excuse me, Darren, we only see part of your numbers. I only see budget in 2020. I don't see, is it 2019 on the end there?
yeah, it should be. I haven't had that.
Am I the only one? Does rest of council see 3 columns?
That's it. We can follow along in our agenda package as well and see the whole statement there.
Did that make any change?
No.
I just kind of resized it, but
No, that's okay. We'll follow.
okay. Sorry about that. It's the first time I've had that issue.
Oh,
So
Oh, there we
Now
go.
we can see us.
That's
Now,
better.
okay.
Still missing part.
If I can resize it like that, and I don't know if that helps any.
Yeah, it shows everything to me anyway.
Yeah.
I see from 2019 and yeah, the whole screen's there.
Okay.
I don't hook up.
Oh,
Okay, there you go.
I know that sometimes when we're looking at things from an Apple product, it looks a little different than from a regular desktop, but I'm not sure if that's the issue or not. But anyways, I guess if this is good enough, I'll carry on.
It's good now.
The
Thanks.
work's good. Thank you.
Okay, good. I'm glad that you let me know for sure. So the revenues, again, very consistent to last year, up slightly, but almost the same at 24.5 million, and a little bit under budget, but again, pretty close to the budget. Some of the highlights: property taxes is up about 315,000, pretty close to the budget as we normally expect. The one area that's down is user fees and sales of goods, and that's down about $1 million and quite a bit under budget as well. So a couple of reasons. There's just decrease in consumption for water and wastewater this year. And then also, just like every other town and municipality in Alberta, your recreation fees for the arena and the aquatic center and similar activities were down significantly because of the COVID situation. So a lot of the user fees revenues were down. Offsetting that though this year was government transfers for operating. So that was 1.3 million last year, and it's up to 2.2 million this year. The biggest portion of that increase is the MOST grant, or the Municipal Operating Support Transfer. So that's the federal provincial grant that was put in place to help cover off some of those costs for COVID. There's also all your other regular grants that are included in there as well. But so that's kind of what I thought were the highlights on the revenues. Down a little bit, but then offset from the MOST grant. Expenses this year, just over 25 million, down about 400,000 or 410,000 from last year, and quite a bit over budget. So the main reason we're over budget is just the way that the amortization of tangible capital assets are budgeted, and that affects quite a few of the different line categories. But overall, amortization expense this year came in at about 3.4 million. Sorry, 3.8 million, and the budget was just under 500,000. So we're about 3.4 million over on amortization. So that means everything else, all the other expenses are in total under budget by about $1 million or a little over $1 million. Some of the things that were under budget that show on various lines again is salaries and wages were about $750,000 under budget, and contracted services were almost 300,000 under budget as well. So that's kind of the main highlights. If you look at some of the individual lines here, protective services is up a little bit over last year, and basically that's to do with COVID supplies and an additional officer that was in place this year. Transportation services is the one that shows a significant over budget, and that's almost entirely due to the amortization. Water and wastewater is down a bit, and again, we had reduced revenues because of consumption, so we have reduced expenses as well. And then the one other area that's significantly different than last year is in planning and development. So in 2019, there was the CARES grant that was used to flow through basically to the Olds Institute. And that was a one-time $600,000 expense that we wouldn't expect to have this year. So overall, we're down. In addition to that, we did have less payments to Olds Institute this year than were budgeted and from last year as well. So that's the expenses. So our revenues were up a bit, our expenses were down a bit. So our income, or in this case, our loss from operations has improved over last year. Still a loss, but it's quite a bit less than last year, by about $573,000 improvement. So that's good. And then how this works is we add in our capital revenues to come down to our total annual surplus, or excess of revenue over expenses of just over $2 million. So this year we had, we'll see in a page or two, we had about $8 million of tangible capital asset additions. And 2.4 million of that was funded either by government transfers, so the government grants, basically the MSI and the federal gas tax grants, funded a big portion of the capital assets, some capital donations, and then a contributed asset, which was the fire truck from the county. So $8 million of tangible capital asset additions, 2.4 was funded, so that leaves the other 5.6 to be funded through operations. So again, bottom line for the year, surplus of 2 million compared to the previous year was 4.2 million. And the big change here is just reduced activity in the tangible capital assets. Prior year, we had 5.2 million of capital grants, and this year 2.4 million. Maybe I'll just kind of pause there, see if there's any questions or comments, or would you rather kind of wait until the end? I'm good either way.
Let's go all the way through, because while you're sharing your screen, I can't see all of my counsel. So yeah, let's wait till the very end and we'll go from there.
Okay, perfect. So then going back a page on the actual financial statements, we go to the statement of financial position. So we start with our financial assets, we minus our liabilities, and we come down to a subtotal net financial debt. And the net debt figure has increased from about 1.3 million to about 3.1 million. So it's up just under 2 million. And how that happened, I guess, is financial assets increased quite a bit, but liabilities increased even more. So assets are up about 10 million and financial liabilities are up about 12. So cash is the biggest change under financial assets, and there was about over $9 million was generated through operations, and then quite a bit of that was spent on tangible capital assets, and another source of cash was long-term debt. So during the year, about 9.8 million of proceeds were received for long-term debt to cover off some of the expenses towards the community, or the operations center. So our financial assets are up. Liabilities again, the biggest changes in long-term debt. But other than that, accounts payable are up as well. And that's largely just due to holdbacks payable in construction, your capital payables relating to the operations center. Deferred revenue is also up. So deferred revenue is what that is when we get grants specific that are reserved for, they're intended for specific purposes rather than just general operations. We defer the grant until they're spent and then we recognize the revenue. So this year we have quite a bit more of deferred revenue that will get recognized as revenue presumably in 2021. So we have the $3.1 million net financial debt. Move down on that page, here's the 3.1. Then we add in our non-financial assets, which the biggest part of that is tangible capital assets, and there's also some prepaid expenses. When we add those in, we get total accumulated surplus of 92.1 million. It's the same number we saw on the statement of operations. So some of the changes, prepaid expenses is down quite a bit because in the previous year we had the first quarter payment to Mountain View seniors was paid, and this year it wasn't paid until January. So, and then the biggest numbers that we see is intangible capital assets. Started the year at about 91.2 million and ended the year at 95.2. So up pretty significantly. During the year, there were $8 million of additions. About 5.2 million of that is from the operations center. And then there's various other engineered structures, which is roads and wastewater projects, vehicles, machinery, and all that kind of stuff. So 8 million gets added in, and then we amortize or expense the assets over their expected useful life. And this year we amortized just under 4 million, about 3.9 million. So overall assets are up just over 4. That's total accumulated surplus. 92 million is a big number, and it's made up of 3 different components, which we're not allowed to disclose on this schedule. So there's a note in a schedule that show what it's made up of. So note 11 shows, okay, we have $92.1 million total surplus. So since the beginning of the town of Olds, 100 and whatever, 20 years or however long Olds has been around, I'm going to guess it's somewhere around there. There's been total excess of revenues over expenses of 92 million. Of that amount, 78 million has already been spent and invested in the tangible capital assets. It's been invested in the infrastructure, roads, buildings, equipment, etc. So we still have the assets and the service potential of that surplus, but it's not spendable surplus. We can't spend that again because it's already been spent and just sitting in different form of assets. The remainder, about 14 million or so, is what's available for future spending. 4.2 million is unrestricted, so that means it can be spent on whatever the town needs it for. And 9.6 million has been set aside in specific reserves to show that it's intended to be used for specific purposes. So 14 million for additional or for future spending. When we look back at our statement of operations, we have annual expenses somewhere in the $25 million range. So we have over half a year's worth of surpluses, I guess, or expenses in surplus that's spendable. So not a bad place to be. Another note that I like to look at is the debt limit note. So each year we can do the calculation of the debt limit based on the revenues of the town times it by 1.5, and we get the total debt limit. And then we can compare that to the total debt. The total debt here includes the loan guarantee for Olds Institute. So it's does include that whether or not we expect that we'll have to pay any of that loan or not, it needs to be included in the total debt for purposes of this calculation, just because the town has guaranteed that loan. So if we look at that, basically 96% of the debt limit has been used to cover off the town's debt, Olds Institute loan, and the Olds Institute guarantee. If we kind of back out the loan guarantee, we're down to about 90% of the debt limit used. And if we back out the Olds Institute loan itself, because we have the offsetting receivable, that would bring us down to about 63% of the limit used. So we still have some capacity there remaining if we exclude the Olds Institute portion. When we look at the debt servicing limit We don't include any of the old institute loan payments because we're at this point, we're not expecting we're ever going to have to repay any of those. So if we look at that limit, we've only used about 36% of our debt servicing capacity. So next year in 2021, we'll pay about 2.2 million of total principal and interest payments. And under the calculation, we could go up as high as 6 million. So we've got some capacity remaining there, assuming that nothing changes on the old institute side. Another note that's obviously everybody is maybe sick of talking about and hearing about, but it's a part of our daily lives. So we talk about a little bit about COVID-19. So what happened this year was for most municipalities is we had reduced user fees for recreation and arenas and pools and that kind of stuff, decreased penalties for being late on taxes, but then offset by the municipal operating support transfer grant. So this year we were able to get some funding to offset it. That program ended end of March 2021. So beyond that, I'm not sure if there's been any additional funding announced. So there's still uncertainty as to what's going to happen. And so we just make sure that that's disclosed. That's what I wanted to cover for the financial statements themselves. Then as far as the indicators of financial condition, I've picked a few to go through. And I'm assuming I'm still good to continue on.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So I think there's about, I guess there's 106 different towns in Alberta. And when we're looking at the graphs, we'll see one line that says we're comparing to all the towns, another one that we're comparing to the same type in a similar population. So here's the towns, there's 13 including olds that are within 25% plus or minus population of olds. So that's kind of the line that I like to use as a comparable for the most part. So I guess some of the graphs, I think there's about 14 different indicators, and I've picked, I think, about the top 5 or so that I think kind of are the most interesting to me anyways. So this first one is comparing total financial assets to total liabilities. And so the town of Olds line is the blue line that extends to 2020. The comparables, the green line is the town comparable average or comparable population line. So that's the one I like to use to compare to the most. So Olds is down a little bit from the comparable, but if you look at the amount of investments in tangible capital assets in the last few years, kind of that explains why we're a little bit down on the financial asset side because we're higher on the non-financial asset side. And I'll show those numbers a little bit more. The next graph I like to look at is operating expenses compared to the taxable assessment. So 25 million of operating expenses this year compared to, so the taxable assessment is our proxy of the overall economy. And you can see over the last 5 years, the taxable assessment in the town has been increasing. So that means there's been a bit of inflation or increase in activity in the town. So that's just basically the assessed value. When your assessor does the assessments for all the properties in the town each year, that's what the total is. If the line is basically flat, which yours is, that means your spending is basically in line with the economy. If it's significantly increasing, then obviously that would mean your expenses were growing faster than the overall economy. And if it was decreasing, then that would mean your expenses were declining. Yours is pretty flat, which is really pretty typical of what I see for most municipalities. There's another graph that shows the similar revenues, and you'll see that it's pretty well in correlation with this as well. So your revenues and expenses are pretty well correlated. I mentioned when we looked at your financial assets that it was a little bit lower than the comparables. Big part of that is because your investment in infrastructure. So here you can see the amounts that the town has added for tangible capital assets in each of the last 5 years. If you added those up, it'd be about $34 million. Annual amortization expense over the same period, you can see. So if we're above 1.0 in any particular year, that means we've invested more in our capital asset pool than we've expensed or used up. So our expenses, our amortization expense is our best estimate of the amount of capital assets that we've utilized during the year. So anytime we're above 1, we're investing more in our capital asset pool than we've used. So each of the last 4 years, you can see the town is significantly higher than amortization. So you've been investing into your capital asset pool. And over the last 5 years, your net book value of the capital assets has increased by about $24 million. And that's after amortization. So that $24 million significant investment into capital asset pool. And obviously that's kind of what I said earlier about your financial assets. That's why it's a little bit lower, is because it's been invested into the capital asset pool. This graph here talks about the public debt charges compared to revenues. So debt servicing is the amount of scheduled interest and principal payments that'll be paid next year, so 2.2 million. And if we can compare that to your operating revenues of about 24.5 million, about 9% or so of your revenues are going to pay for long-term debt payments. And that's up from last year because we had the new debt this year for the operations center. Here's the other graph that I talked about for the revenue side. So this is the town's own source revenues, meaning we take out or exclude any government transfers from the federal or provincial governments. We're just including own source revenues, so taxes, utilities, that kind of thing that the town raises itself. And you can see the graph here, the blue line is pretty flat. It's down a little bit this year, and that's because of COVID reduced activities. But overall, I'd say it's pretty flat and correlated with your expense line. This next graph is accumulated surplus that's available for future use. So when we looked at the accumulated surplus, and we looked at note 11, I think it was, it showed that we had about 13.9 million of surplus that's available for future use. If we look at that over the last 5-year period, it has actually increased a bit, about 3.5 million increase over the 5 years. At the same time, you've increased your tangible capital asset pool by 24 million. So you've been able to kind of do an increase in both financial and non-financial assets. So it's a good result. Then we have the management letter and post-audit letter. And now I'm guessing that you might want to go in camera for that, or?
Yep, absolutely. All right, so let's see if there's any questions for the public portion. Darren, if you could put me back to full screen so I can see. So is there any questions on the first portion of this? All right, Councillor Thompson, then Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through yourself to Mr. Adamson. Last year, Mr. Adamson, there was there was a report provided by a committee that was looking at our compensation and how we budget for ourselves as councillors. Can you advise how did we do for the year 2020 as a budget to actual for council per diems and costs?
That's a great question, and actually that's not really something that we look at as far as our audit. We do look at overall salaries and benefits, but not specifically council. So I didn't see anything that looked concerning or out of the ordinary when I did the audit and when I look at your compensation note, but we didn't specifically kind of do an analysis of that. So I mean, we could do that if you wanted to, but that's really not part of what we normally do for auditing the financial statements. I didn't see anything unusual, but so I don't know if that answers the question. Probably not, but.
Thank you.
Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Adamson. On page 30 of our agenda package, which is page 13 of your audit, talks of long-term debt. At the very top of the page, number 9, if you could find that page, says debentures supported by loan repayment agreement, 10 million. Is that the debt to or the loan for OI?
Yes, yeah, that was the
Okay.
original loan for OI, and then there was principal payments made on that for a few years, but this last year, it was just interest only payments.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. If there are no more questions for the public portion, I would entertain a motion to go to a closed session. Depending on council's will, but I would suggest that CAO Merritt and Director Linderman come with us into the closed session unless there's any objection. May I have that motion?
Also,
Councillor Ryan.
thank you. I move that we go into a closed session to discuss the other areas of the audit report with Mr. Merritt, Council, and Director Lindeman, as well as Mr. Adamson.
Okay. And just looking for the. All right. Any
Point
questions?
of order, it's Marcy.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's section 25.
Section
Thank you.
25.
That's
Thank you,
what we're
Marcy.
Struggling with. Thank you. Section
Thank-
25 of FOIP.
Yep. Thank
Yeah.
you, Ms. Mitkin.
All right, so comments, questions, concerns regarding that motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? And opposed? That motion carries. All right, All right, I will call today's meeting back to order. Thank you so much for your patience, everybody. We'll continue with a little bit more of a presentation. Director Linderman, would you like to speak to the surplus, or would Mr. Adamson like to do that?
No, I can if that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. So I'll just draw you back to note 11, which is the breakdown of the accumulated surplus.
Mhm.
And so I just wanted to highlight in there, our restricted reserves rose by 637,000 in 2020. These were all budgeted transfers, mainly our amortization transfer that we do. Our unrestricted rose by 2.8 million. And our equity and TCA went down a bit for a total of just over $2 million increase in accumulated surplus. So from this, I have two suggestions for council, just to move some of that out of unrestricted surplus into a restricted surplus. The one would be for our tax stabilization, just to get it in line with our policy. So our policy has it at 3% of our tax revenue. So we would need a motion for $9,468 to be transferred to our tax stabilization reserve. And then the other motion would be for $200,000 to come from that unrestricted surplus and just to be moved to a general operating reserve. And this is to be used in our 2021 budget as part of our COVID relief. And if there was any questions on that surplus, I could take those.
Sorry about that. I was frozen momentarily. Councillor Ryan.
Okay, I'm gonna ask a really dumb question because I can't find where the note is. So you'll have to excuse me for my ignorance. So this had nothing to do with the overage of money due to assessment, the rise in assessment that we discussed at our last council meeting, that money was going into the RCMP and some money being transferred elsewhere. Is that correct? This has got nothing to do with that.
No, so that's all 2021 assessment. This is our surplus from 2020.
Oh, okay.
It's just our excess revenue over expenses at the end of the year.
Okay, thank you very much. I didn't want to get confused, so thank you.
All right. Any further questions regarding the financial statements? All right, seeing none. Oh, yeah, Councillor Ryan, yeah.
Thank you. I thought Director Lindeman was also going to speak to the 2.8 million as well.
Isn't that what she just did?
Well, I thought you were going to do a breakdown as to where things came from and how we ended up being having the access.
Froze for a minute, but I think I'm sorry, Director Linderman, didn't you do that?
I didn't do the breakdown, but so I can do that.
Sorry.
Yep. So our unrestricted surplus rose by the 2.8 million, as I had mentioned. 1.2 million of this was actually from 2019, and it was just a timing issue between our ops center debenture and taking it out in 2020. The other 1.6 million can mainly be attributed to our MOST grant, which we received from the provincial government. That was $935,000. Salaries and wages were down about 750,000. Our Florida's franchise fee was up just over 200,000. And even with our facilities being closed, the savings in expenses exceeded any lost revenues that we had. So that is where that MOST grant, we were able to put that to reserves.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Director Linderman. Any questions before I ask for a motion? Seeing none, I'll ask for that motion to accept. Councillor Harper.
So your worship, do you want a motion to accept the audited financial statements today?
Yes, please. The motion on page 13.
So thank you. So move that the Town of Wolf's 2020 audited financial statements and the 2020 Province of Alberta financial information return be approved as presented.
Excellent. Questions, comments, concerns regarding that motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor and opposed. And that motion carries. Mr. Adamson, thank you very much for your work. We know these times have been trying, especially in your industry, to get out to organizations like ours during COVID, and your people were incredibly professional and very well received when they were in office to do their work. Thank you very much, and we'll probably see you this time next year.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. It's good to hear that, and I'll definitely pass that on. Just as a quick little heads up as to what to expect next now that it's formally approved, I will ask my assistant Rhonda to send email. It'll come through Right Signature. It's just like DocuSign. It's a totally secure document signing. Come to your worship. One other counselor, I guess I'll just ask Sheena to send me the email addresses, herself and Michael as well. Everything will get signed, and then we'll get it all to Municipal Affairs easily before the deadline. We still have a few days, so we're in good shape there. So again, thanks to everybody, and yeah, hopefully we come back again next year.
That second signature, of course, will be Councillor Bennett, as she is Deputy Mayor this particular month.
Perfect.
Correct?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. See you later.
All right. All right, let's move along. Item 3B, CA. Oh, waving. Yeah. What did I forget?
Those two motions for the moving from the unrestricted to
Oh, I
the
thought we were
restricted
doing that
reserve.
down at the property tax and supplementary.
If we can move the surplus to the restricted tax stabilization fund.
Oh, okay, I thought we were doing that under 5C.
Oh, no.
No? Okay, all right. Councillor Ryan, you want to make?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I move that $9,468 of the 2020 surplus be moved from unrestricted surplus to the tax stabilization fund.
Excellent. All right, questions, comments, concerns regarding that motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor and opposed. That motion carries. Councillor Blatz, the second one, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that 200,000 of the 2020 surplus be moved from unrestricted surplus to general operating fund.
Excellent. Comments, questions, concerns regarding that motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor and opposed. That motion carries as well. Thank you. Sorry about the confusion. I thought we were taking care of that under 5C. All righty, let's move along to 3B. Mr. Merritt.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I believe we have Lisa Nicholson here to do a presentation for Hope for Mountain View County Kid Society, and this here, I think the floor is yours, and she is here.
There she is. Welcome, Ms. Nicholson.
Hello there, good afternoon, Council and everyone else in attendance. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm just waiting to see here if I have admin role to share my screen. I think it is, so that's good. It's all working out. Perfect. Well, thank you guys. I think last time I presented in front of you was at the very beginning of the pandemic, and who knew that we'd still be in this position over a year later. So it's been very unusual times. So thank you so much for the time today. I wanted to really present where Hope for Kids is currently today, a little bit of update of the programmings that we've streamlined, and then any ways that basically council can spread our message so that we know the message is getting out to a vulnerable population in Old. So I appreciate your time, so I'll get started. So obviously, you know, we're Hope for MVC Kids. I know the majority from the last of the presentation are aware of why Hope for Kids was started, but basically I have 4 children. One has cerebral palsy and other chronic medical conditions, and I have another daughter with low functioning autism, mental health issues, and a missing corpus callosum, and she requires 24-hour care. And basically this program was developed from a frustration and a lack of services from both my personal and my professional experience. So are you guys all able to see the presentation okay? Perfect. That's always a good start. From my work as a behavioural needs assistant, and also the co-founder also was working with at-risk youth, we knew from both our personal and professional that there was gaps in the services that was offered either through community and social services programs or through Alberta Health Services. And one of the things that I had, my daughter spent 2 years on life support machine, and very often a family, if a child is sick, we can cover our financial obligations for maybe a month or 2, but when it becomes long term, of course, employers can only give so much sick leave and compassionate leave. So when you're raising a child with a chronic lifelong condition, these are some of the expenses that are not covered elsewhere. And another thing, you know, we can't always throw out a GoFundMe every 6 months, right? So if it's a one-off situation, we can throw out a GoFundMe, and that tends to be the things that community members will see. But when we're dealing with raising a child into adulthood, these costs are lifelong. Then from the professional work that I've also managed to do, I'm now the Provincial Parent Advisory Committee member for Central Alberta for Community and Social Services Advice to the Minister, and I'll be on my 4th term for that. I've also been taking the acting chair role at the moment, well, co-chair role, sorry. So there's also known gaps in services there. I also sit on the Regional PPAC Committee as well. And then for the last year, I was asked to do through a grant through Autism Alberta. I've been their complex consultant, case consultant for the last 12 months. The funding actually ends on April the 31st, but I've been in one of the most complex cases across the province, assisting families with what basically complex from education to healthcare to community and social services programs. So basically, this program fills in the gaps that those services do not offer. So we're still 100% run by volunteers, and still right now 100% of donations go straight to family applications, with our operating costs being funded by grants. Mission has not changed. It's still based on a foundation of compassion, and we strive to pay it forward by providing support to those families with children in medical need across Mountain View County. And the vision has always been supporting families with children in medical need in the county. So we've now made it a little bit more streamlined. We've always offered these programs, but the programs, the community seemed to get a little bit hazy. So we've just cleared up the language a little bit to break it down a lot more clearer is exactly what we do cover. We cover, like I said, we're classed from the CRA as a health organisation. That's what our charity status is, and we fill in those gaps. So Hope for MVC Kids Society can assist if a local child is hospitalised and admitted, and that can be for any reason, from as minor as an appendicitis to as severe as a childhood cancer. The programme, we can assist with car parking, meals, fuel, sibling care, and if any long-term admission, we have had the potential for additional support such as rent, mortgage and utility assistance. We never give cash to families. It is a program and it's been designed as a program, and we've never give funds to families. 3 reasons for that. 1, the tax implications for families. 2, many of our grants have to provide receipts where the money is going. And 3, anybody that donates to our program can be guaranteed that the money is going where it's said to be going. Program 2, we assist with adaptive equipment for home and school that's not covered by other sources. So for example, we have in Alberta Aids to Daily Living. They'll provide maybe a wheelchair, but they won't do any of the customization. So for example, we had a child in Olds that for Holy Trinity School so that she could basically use the desk space and get to use her wheelchair to fit the school class desk. The adaptations were not available through that program, so we covered all the additional costs for that equipment. So that just gives you an idea. We know what the government programs are, and we fill in the gaps of the missing pieces. So the other thing again is home adaptation. So again, Aids to Daily Living have a check sheet what they will and won't cover. And accessibility, we often think about accessibility as in our community and as in our schools and in our hospitals. One thing that we never really consider is that the most inaccessible place can often be our homes. And so really the one priority should be that we make our homes accessible. So again, anything that's not covered with from other sources. So we've done a few little ramps that weren't covered, some adaptations to that, bathroom spaces, widening of doorways. Often Aids to Daily Living will cover the bathroom adaptation, but they won't cover the widening of the doorway to get the wheelchair in. Those kind of things is where we fit in. Then the other thing is we cover therapy such as counselling, private, OT, PT, mental health needs, alternative therapy covered, not covered by health insurance. So again, we're finding an increase in these kind of things. If they have if the child has a disability, they may be able to get OT and PT through Alberta Health Services or through specialised services through FSCD. But if it's actually not something that they have been like a long-term sickness and that's not available, we'll cover in the gaps. And again, the same with counselling, obviously mental health amongst our youth, well, all demographics. And over the next few years here, I'm sure we're going to see an even more increase than that. Often they can contact Alberta Health Services and be told that it's several months before they can get seen. So we have been paying for some private therapy, mental health supports, counsellors for families while they wait for those appointments to come through our Alberta Health Services, just because the demand is not being met. Program Thrive is another one that we're seeing arising. We're currently supporting 2 just this month. We actually just got another application for this. It's prescription support. So again, there's programs through Alberta Works, but the demographic of income can be $30,000. And if you're claiming EI and you've been laid off right now, some of that you still may be meeting that 30,000 threshold. But as you can imagine, in Alberta, earning $30,000 as your combined income to keep your house is really not a lot. So again, if it's not covered by a government program or private healthcare, we're paying for the prescription costs. Or sometimes we've had drugs that are not covered. They're not on the list for the healthcare services, but Alberta Children's Hospital are recommending for that child. And so then we will cover those costs because they've had a denial through their own private health insurance or through the government service. This is the program 6, is one that we're really finding an increase in, is advocacy. And to be honest, the hours that we need to cover this on volunteers is getting a lot more. It's more becoming a full-time job. We're receiving calls a lot from mental health supports, a lot just needing to navigate government programs. They're aware of my other roles in the region, and so they'll call and they really need somebody to help navigate the health education system, fill in government paperwork, and they really want to speak to somebody who's been where they've been and has the lived experience, so they feel that they're not alone. So a lot of it is that work really, and that's the bit that's not necessarily an application, but it is something that we are definitely trying to grow so that we can protect the most vulnerable in the community. And we've been looking at growing and focusing this. We have our big strategic plan meeting set for January 2022. And I think this will be a big focus of the board, because we need to start meeting the demand of our community and where they need our help right now. And the advocacy and mental health is going to be a huge section of where we may change and try to get additional grants and services so that we can start meeting that influx of demand. So that's something for us that's going to be huge and requires a lot of time. The eligibility and selection criteria is still not changed. So Hope for MVC Kids, we cover all families with children in Mountain View County, 0 to 18. The child has a medical diagnosis from the certified medical practitioner. And again, the recommendation for equipment never comes from the parent. It must come from it must come from a medical professional. They are the ones who are the professionals and know what's the best for the child. So again, we don't focus on what's recommended. That comes from the medical professionals. If it's for equipment, they do have to provide 2 quotes. And the biggest, as you can imagine, probably the 3 biggest towns that we see the most, rather than the rural community, we see the majority of applications from the town of Olds, Didsbury and Carstairs. Not too many from Sundry. They still don't seem to know exactly who we are, but spreading our message is what we rely on you guys, town council and community social services, advertising and all of that, so that the town are aware, because as you can imagine, with us all being volunteers, sometimes it's hard to be full-time sharing who we are and what we do. I think I said to you before, there's what is the conditions we support. I sat down with the Alberta Children's Hospital and their resource, social worker and nurse in the very early days with Hope for Kids. And if there's a clinic at the Alberta Children's Hospital, we cover it. So this is just a very few of those that we've picked out. But basically, if you can get a medical appointment, specialist appointment for it at Children's, we cover it. And that was something that was requested from the CRA. They wanted to list of every single diagnosis that we would cover. So that was the easiest way for me to get that information to them. And again, as I've spoken before, we don't give cash to families. We are a program. And so this is where we get around that. And so with the car parking, we buy the parking pass. With meals, they'll get a prepaid Visa or a MasterCard, and then they submit the receipts along with that, with the blank card at the end of the hospital stay. We have a great relationship with Ronald McDonald House. They bill us directly for both Edmonton, Stollery and the Calgary. But if we have to find a hotel because they are full, then the hotel will bill us directly. Same with mortgage and rent, they will bill us directly. Sibling care is the same, and so on. So I don't think you need me to read through the whole list, but we go around it that way. So 75 plus applications have been approved to date. Totalers couldn't get you the exact figure, but I know it's just over the $200,000 mark to families. Stories can always be found on the web page. We update them, and on our Facebook page. To give you an idea, just in the last 6 weeks, applications have been, we've had a school home assistive equipment, so computer equipment for school for a child with needs that is doing online learning, and because of COVID-19 and their vulnerability cannot attend back to school. So we're providing the equipment so that they can do specialized equipment, their online schooling. We've had 2 prescription supports applications. We've had a long advocacy case for a child that we were supporting that had tried to commit suicide following sexual assault. And we've been looking at trying to find a long-term mental health placement for that individual and helping the family through that. We've had advocacy support. I have a meeting this week for a family that are going through their first ever FSCD application. I've had a mental health admission, and then unfortunately we had the twin story that you may have seen on our page where we had twins from Olds that unfortunately one passed away. So it's been a very difficult just 6 weeks. We're very, I guess I'm always worrisome of the amount of I guess trauma that the board has to experience as volunteers. So one thing we're also looking at is developing a grant that we can also offer our own board counselling, because it is becoming quite apparent that the complexity of these cases and the severity of these cases is increasing within our community. And growth predictions for the next 5 years. COVID may throw a little bit of a spanner into this. You may or may not know back in, oh, sorry, I needed to go back. Will it let me go back? There we go. My apologies. There we go. You may or may not know that we were spending more funds than what we were able to basically raise with the cancellation of events and the high amount. Like, we applied for the civil society grant. We wanted to get an office space and we wanted to start staffing this so we could meet that demand. It was Olds that we were actually looking to have it, because Hope for MVC Kids is based 10 minutes from Olds in my home. And we didn't get it, but there was over 500 applications for that grant. So as you can imagine, we're all struggling for the same pot of money in the province. And so grants is harder to obtain. And of course, our fundraising events have been a struggle. So we did have to pause our applications back in May for a short time while we did a couple of fundraising campaigns, and we were able to restart them last June. Right now, we're not doing too badly, but it's always a concern of ours that at some point we're going to have to press pause again because we're not meeting the demand in the community. That's the first time in 7 years that we've ever had to do this, and this is coming up to our 8th year now. So this year projected just for family applications is 80,000, and as you can see that graph there, so by the 5-year mark we'll be close to needing to fundraise $250,000, and based on volunteers in a small rural community, you can imagine what kind of a challenge that is to meet that community need. But you know, we created something to fill in the gaps. We just want to make sure that we can try and sustain it so we can keep filling in the gaps for our most vulnerable in the community. So it's grown from way more than just a small charity. When I started this, I had no idea what I was getting myself into or the amount of work that it was going to take myself and the amazing volunteers that do that. We got the award for 2019 for excellence in the rural community. So we got that to making a contribution to a barrier-free, inclusive community in Alberta. I'm also honoured to say that this week I'm being featured on CTV as the Inspired Albertan Award, and that's for the work from Hope for Kids, Autism Alberta and PPAC. So someone in the community nominated me, and I don't do it for the thanks or the recognition, but I'm just glad that, you know, we have something local in our community that we can be proud of its achievements, and hope that we can continue on. Not letting me click. Okay, so how can you help? Well, the biggest thing really for more of a town council is spreading the message. How do you get it down to all of the people in the towns of Olds office that if someone comes into the community and they need a help, that they're aware of us? So any way that you can do that. We are going to try our annual fundraiser that was cancelled last year, and we would love obviously anybody to attend and support that. We do have the Disability Advocate of Alberta. He will be our guest speaker at the event, opening that, sharing stories of our families that we've helped support. And then ultimately, we want to have fun, because I think we've all deserved it in our local community to start thinking about fun. But because of social distancing, we're imagining we have to limit our numbers. So normally at this event, we can have 220, but we think we'll probably only be able to get 120 because I'm sure there'll be some regulations. And we've set ourselves quite the task of trying to raise $100,000 in one night. So how have we done that? We're trying to do sponsorship, and we have received one sponsorship already. So Integrity Ford, Integrity RV, and they're our first $10,000 sponsor. If council know anybody that has extra money down their couch that wants to buy a sponsorship, we have some perks, and there's a full sponsorship package. They will be treated like true VIPs, and there's lots of advertising that will be done to thank them for that. So we would appreciate any support in that area. We have, if you can't attend the event and you really want to support us, every year we like to have our families come in and talk about their experience, but they may not have the money for the ticket. So we always have the Family of Hope. That family, you can just donate your ticket. If you can't attend, just put in the comment box of the ticket price, this is a ticket to be donated. And then what we also did the previous year is we had extra tickets donated. So we actually got the towns to nominate somebody who in their community had been volunteering a lot and deserved a thank you and recognition, and we thank them at the event. So there's many ways that if you can't attend that you can still support. So if anybody is interested in finding out sponsorship packages, you can find all the email contacts. Just email me and I'll send out a sponsor package. We still have our Donate Your Coffee, and we also have Smile Cookie campaign coming up. The owner of Olds has been very gracious to also give us the Didsbury location this year. Last year we raised over $10,000. So if all you can do is buy a cookie and buy a box or 10 boxes, then we are very appreciative, because every single dollar comes back to us then. And we're always looking for volunteers. Right now we have the 12 volunteers that are on the board, and then we also have a whole list of 30 volunteers in the community. But if you know anybody that wants to sign up, when things open up, I'm imagining we're going to have a lot more. We want to have volunteer teas and a lot more events, and really try and up the gears for our fundraising so that we can make sure that we survive this like so many other community groups in town. And I think I've probably exhausted, and you're probably tired with all my speaking, but I would love to open it up to questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mrs. Nicholson. You do phenomenal work, and nominations such that you've humbly said that you've received does a lot for your profile around the communities in Mountain View County. And I'll maybe pick up the phone with Mayor Leslie and tell him that Sundry's got to step up their game for you guys as well. All right.
Awesome.
So you can certainly do some lobbying like that. All right. So may I have a motion to accept for information the first one there on page 53 of the agenda, and then we'll start with some questions. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Worship. I move that Council thank Mrs. Nicholson and receive the Hope for Mountain View County Kids Society presentation for information.
Excellent. Thank you. Questions? Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Ms. Nicholson. First, thank you to you and all the volunteers for doing such an awesome job for helping all those families that fall between the cracks in the system. And I'm just wondering, what is your annual budget? And are you able to access other grants like from our New to You or FCSS grants?
Yeah, the New to You we've just made an application for, and they've always been really gracious in helping support some specific equipment. I know with the FCSS, we are hoping to put one in for the volunteer assistance and retention. But the issue that we've had with the FCSS is because we give the end result of the assistance goes to an individual, that it is not the same as I'm sure that you probably have so Doug on here that can explain it way better than me. But basically, we're not eligible for certain elements of it. But I know for our volunteer retention, volunteer thank you, that is something that we're definitely going to be submitting a grant for. In terms of the budget, I don't have it in front of me. We absolutely do have one. I mean, all of our stuff is always made public at the AGM, and I can definitely send you that in an email. I have the attachment. It's not for some reason pulling up right in front of me now. But we have, yeah, all the set budget and expenditure. And I also have, obviously, at the AGM, and at any point, anyone can see our budget and revenue and expenditure on our financial statement.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Ms. Nicholson, for providing that information. Your group is amazing, and filling in those gaps. Somebody's got to do it, and it's great to see that it's being done so close to home. Could you tell us how many young people in Olds have you been able to help over the last 10 years? We have that in there?
Total, I'm not sure out of the 70, but I remember at the last count, because I had that already from the last meeting, and I know that I believe out of the 70, about 26 of those were from inside the Olds town boundary. Yeah. But I can get you the exact number. Yeah, it was pretty close. Carstairs, Didsbury, and Olds were about one or two separate, but those were the three main applications we're coming from, and then the rest rural, and then only 2 applications from Sundry in 7 years. So yeah, and I do present to their town council next week, so I will be pushing it.
Well, I'll see Mayor Leslie tomorrow in a separate meeting, so
Awesome.
I'll give you a plug there too.
Thank you.
All right. All righty. If there's no more questions, we do have, oh, yes, Councillor Ryan.
Well, I do have another one, but I was going to wait for anybody else on council if they had something else.
Okay. Well, it looks like you're good to go.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I just have one other question. That was, you were talking about getting an office possibly in Olds, and you didn't receive that grant. Is there any other grant that you might be applying to in order to try to do that again in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually got a new grants director 6 months ago. She actually is the human resources manager for cerebral palsy Alberta, and so she's been a great resource to us, but she was a bit exhausted because she started and we've been applying for so much. But the community initiative grant is the one that we'll be going for, and we're hoping to get that in September, and it will have a plan to hopefully have an office space and at least 2 or 3 employees to start really, you know, we always held on to the fact that we were volunteer run and 100% of our donations. Now we've realized that to be able to really to try and do this around gainful employment is starting to become impossible, and so we really needed to restructure. We took a focus on changing our bylaws. We restructured our board, so now I'm not the main. There's a chair and a vice chair, so that was really hard for me to let go the power to somebody else, but I did it because I just couldn't fulfill all the commitments. So we've made some significant changes over the last 6 months, but our real goal now is to really, now we know where the community really needs us, especially during this pandemic, and to be able to grow that need, we really need to start having office space and full-time staff to be able to grow this, and so that we know that the families know that we are there for them in the community.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you.
We do have a motion on the table, so I will call for a vote on that one. All in favor? And opposed? That motion is carried. Now we do have another motion here for a donation. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council approve a donation of $250 to the Hope for Mountain View Kids Society.
Excellent. Comments, questions, concerns on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? And opposed? That motion is carried. We do also have a proposed motion for a silent auction item. Councillor Thompson, you were very close on the last one.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that council direct administration to provide silent auction items or door prizes of an approximate total value of $125 for the November 2021 Hope for MVC Kids Society fundraiser dinner.
Thank you very much. Comments, questions, concerns on that matter? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor and opposed. And that motion carries as well. Thank you so much, Mrs. Nicholson, for your time and for all that you do for the children in Mountain View County.
Thank you so much. And if anybody wants to call and have, when we can, coffee in the future to learn more, I'm absolutely available when things
We'll
open
look
up.
forward to those days.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Council. I appreciate it and have a wonderful day.
You as well.
Thank you.
All right, let's keep moving along. We have item 3C, the Olds District Hospice Society, from one great charitable organization in our town to another. Mr. Merritt.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'll ask Director Wagstaff to speak about the Hospice Association and their hike, as well as the proclamation. So, Director Wagstaff.
And I am going to turn it over to our staff liaison, Michelle Jorgensen, as Heritage Advisor, who works with the Hospice Society, and she'll take it from here. Michelle.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. Thank you for your time today. It is my pleasure to introduce Charlene Schramm, Chair for the Olds District Hospice Society. She's here with us today to share about the upcoming hike for hospice, as well as a request for proclamation for Hospice Palliative Care Week. And there's Charlene. Thank you.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Charlene.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of Town Council. Thank you, Michelle. First, I wanted to thank you for giving me an opportunity to touch base with you and share a little bit of information. And outside of that, I wanted to thank you for always supporting the hospice in the varied ways the council has. As individuals in our community, there's a lot of familiar faces on this screen right now. And as representatives of council, and in the way that you've supported us through FCSS and New to You, and in the regular proclamation request we make year after year for Palliative Care Week. So thank you for all of that. It's an honor to be here and to be representing this group. On May the 2nd, Sunday, May 2nd, the first Sunday in May, is our traditional hike for hospice. This will be our 10th annual hike for hospice. And we have always had that in conjunction with the Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association. This is their baby that we've connected up with over the last decade. And so it kicks off National Hospice Palliative Care Week, which is why we make the request yearly for it to be proclaimed Palliative Care Week in Olds. So the money that we raise at our hike all stays in the community. It goes to offset the lease suites, lease payments, as well as incidentals in our 2 hospice suites that are operating out of the Seasons Encore building, the assisted living facility here in Olds. And all of the supports that we offer to families who are in an end-of-life journey are free of charge. So this being our major fundraiser, just as a point of interest, over the last 9 years, we've raised just over $205,000 at our hike. So our community blows us away year after year by their support and generosity. I wanted to give you just a couple little stats about hike or about hospice, and then make the request officially for Palliative Care Week. And if you had any questions, I would do my best to answer them. So the Hospice Society has been together for unofficially 12 to 15 years. And in that time, we have served 59 families in our suites. Our suites were opened in 2015. We have served 105 families in hospital or in home or other facility. We've served 86 people in a consulting sort of information sharing capacity where we didn't actually end up giving them supports through, sorry, my daughter is phoning me. And 150 or so bereavement because part of our mandate is to help people through bereavement. And we have a fairly new program within the Hospice Society called NavCare, which is helping people be a connector in the community to different supports that are here if they're in a situation of chronic illness. And we've so far served, I think, about 50 of those. We have at any time around 70 volunteers, and these include our trained hospice palliative care volunteers, our NavCare volunteers, our board and committee members, event volunteers, and sometimes they wear all of those hats at once. And I don't know that I need to take up any more of your time unless you have any questions.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Sharm. I continue to be overwhelmed by the volunteer organizations and the charity outreach things that this town offers the residents. And the Olds and District Hospice Society is certainly way up there on that chart. We have just incredible people in the town of Olds, and yourself included. So thank you so much for being here today. May I start with a motion for the proclamation, and then if there are questions, we can go from there. Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Charlene. Great presentation as usual, and you guys do such a phenomenal job. I move that May 2nd to 8th, 2021 be declared as Hospice Palliative Care Week in the town of Olds.
Excellent. Any questions or comments? Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. It's nice to see you, Charlene. Perhaps you can tell us about this VR virtual reality goggle program that you have going on, because I'm enlightened and inspired by whatever this is. Please tell me more.
Well, I don't know that you exactly have the techno wizard to explain it, but we've had two really interesting things happen through our hospice suites. One of them is called Google Nest, and it's kind of like Alexa, I guess. And it was done through a donation in both of our suites. And it enables those people to say, you know, I'd like to hear country music, please call my daughter, that sort of thing. And that's been something that's really helped people, especially in some times of isolation, even in our suites. The virtual goggles, we're really, really excited about. And so, I mean, it is totally right out of, Star Wars, Star Trek. It's the little thing where you're actually there. And I just saw they posted on our Facebook page, one of our hospice clients who agreed to let himself be on our page. And he was walking in a forest with these virtual goggles on. And what I'm really excited about too is that that's sort of a mobile thing that we can use. So we also have a part of one of our mandates is a day hospice program where we offer some support and respite to people who are journeying at home to sort of give their caregiver an afternoon off. We haven't been able to gather that much in the last year, but what we're hoping to do is to make those goggles available to these people in their homes so they can go for a walk back in Scotland or skydive or whatever they'd like to do from their home. So that was I thought that was brilliant. And we're really excited to have those. And those were through a specific donation too. I take it you saw that on Facebook.
Sounds like a lot of fun, although I don't know if I'd want to be skydiving that.
Well, and I realized afterwards, one of the things I didn't mention, we are called the Olds and District Hospice Society. We have taken clients and supported people from, I think, 12 or 14 rural communities in central Alberta area. The majority come from Mountain View County, from Olds, Didsbury, Sundre, and the county. But we have taken people who have family here and want to be here, or we have helped people from a number of communities. So yeah, it's pretty cool work.
Thank you very much. Director Wagstaff, did you have your hand up there?
I did, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to add for council and the public also, new to you thrift store, the Olds and District Hospice Society has been one of its primary beneficiaries of the proceeds over the last decade in the operations of the thrift store, and has over the last 10 years provided $100,000 in donations to the
Yeah,
hospice.
I think even more. I think even a little bit more than that. They've been amazing.
It's just over $100,000
Yeah.
as of last year.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Doug. That's a really good point.
That's excellent. Thank you for pointing that out. All right, any further questions, comments? All right, seeing none, once again, thank you so much for being here, and good luck on Sunday. And with the virtual walk, I know the weather won't be a factor, so
Yeah,
it'd be
yeah.
nice to get people out and get some fresh air. And I know those posts and Facebook updates and things like that are always neat to see, no matter what the weather is. So congratulations and good luck on Sunday. Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
we
Thank
have a
you.
motion on the table, and I'll call for a vote. All in favor? And opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
All right, let's keep moving along. We have item 3D, Emergency Management Agency, CAO.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And we have Acting Director of Emergency Management, Jennifer Lutz, here to give us an update on what is happening in regards to COVID-19 and some of the issues that we are basically looking at. So with that, Jennifer, you're on mute.
Sorry, I thought Sean was unmuting me. Good afternoon, everybody. And that's a tough act to follow. Those last two presentations were very inspiring and uplifting. And once we get past our stats, I'll try and be as inspiring and uplifting as we can on this subject matter as well. So Sean, are you gonna pull up the presentation? Thanks. Okay, so on our first slide, Sean, if you could advance that. Our numbers in Olds have gone up quite significantly as we predicted. Our local numbers on for Olds is 100 right now. So that's gone up quite a bit since even we compiled the data. Our current hospitalizations are 594, and there's 140 in ICU right now. And as I said, Olds is up to 100. So, you know, that's quite a lot since our last update to you. The county is at 79. So we are approximately about 800 or 80 cases per 10,000. So statistically, we could be doing better, but this is what happens with COVID. If it gets in a bit of an area, you expect surges like this, and it's come to our town, so we're seeing some surges. I did check with Alberta Health, and there's nothing that's to pinpoint where our cases are at, but we've seen increases in schools, daycares, day homes, churches, workplaces, and households, but not pinpointing any specific outbreak. Regarding variants, there hasn't been any substantial worries from AHS, anything new since our last report. We know we have some variants in the community, but nothing that stands out from their perspective on their update to us. Town of Olds staff, right now, as of today, we have 1 staff member isolating and 2 firefighters that are fire members that are isolating. So our staffing numbers are pretty darn good, actually. Next slide, please. So again, the incident command post, we're meeting weekly with our emergency management partners, which has been really good, keeping those lines of communications open. We're churning out a lot of information through email, through social media, through the newspaper. Michelle Jorgensen, our liaison officer, continues to do outreach just to make sure everybody's going, you know, is coordinated and communicating, and our safety officer, Deb Rogers, is staying on top of that. So next slide, please. This is the optimistic stuff. Things are working. Public Works, again, more staff are on duty, so no interruptions there. Municipal enforcement, basically getting very good compliance with folks. So not a lot of response required from that group. And ESS, we had a bit of questions on vaccination programming. Premier Kenny addressed it last week. We know that there's a rural issue in getting vaccines with the Moderna product, and they're doing the best they can to keep supply management going. So we still have the 5 clinics or pharmacies offering the program, and if people can't get to that, there's 811, and we have larger centers that are fairly reasonable to get to as well. We did put a request in to see if we could get vaccination data per postal code like they do with stats, so just to give an indication of how many people in our community are vaccinated. So we'll see if we can report on that in the future. Next slide, please. Since we submitted this information last Wednesday, Fire actually has suspended training right now, and their staff is at near capacity, and we haven't had a lot of updates for facilities, but we can leave that up to Q&A. Our planning section was working on the rapid screening, which started last week. We've had fairly good uptake on that, and I got mine done today. It wasn't too difficult. I didn't cry too much, so it made me feel more comfortable coming into the office and knowing that I wasn't going to impact any of my coworkers. We did just send out an email to all businesses, and we'll promote that Alberta, the government of Alberta has expanded the program, so businesses can readily access this program for free. So we sent that communication out this afternoon. Just another tool in the toolbox to manage span of the spread. So business recovery, we sent out a business impact survey. So far this morning we had 80 responses, so fairly good uptake, and we sent out a reminder again today. I saw on social media patio olds, which I thought was pretty good. We got lots of patios to go to, and some communities haven't got on that bandwagon, so it's nice to see so many sunny spots to enjoy food and beverage. Logistics is good, and finance and admin is on track. And with that, I can take any questions.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Lutz, for your presentation. Yeah, the numbers are not great, but it's good to see the rest of the report. And it's not concentrated in one particular aspect without our town. It's the spread right across. I think would probably be a little bit better situation than having one massive outbreak. May I start with a motion, and then we'll do some questions. Councillor Lutz.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that Council accept the emergency management presentation on COVID-19 as for information.
Excellent, thank you. Questions for Mrs. Lutz? Councillor Ryan. Then Harper.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Mrs. Lutz. Yeah, I just want to say thank you for pointing out about the patios. I think that was really great that the town was able to fast track those through so that our restaurants could at least have some businesses going and not feel too much of the crunch. Although the weather permitting, it's been up and down. So that's kind of been a little bit of a difficult thing to flow through, I suppose. But I do have a question, and that is, what are the chances of Olds getting one of those mobile vaccination clinics here?
So we did check into that a few months ago. Well, I guess it was March. It seems like months ago, but it was only March. And we did get the response that with the 5 participating pharmacies and with the proximity to other locations that we were in good shape for vaccination. We could look into that again. I noticed Sundry is doing a pilot, so new things happen all the time. But that was the response we got in March.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it might be worth following through on that.
Noted.
All right, Councillor Harper.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Through you to Ms. Lutz. How many of our staff have taken part in the rapid COVID testing? And
checked.
how often do you do it?
We are doing the program Mondays, and then for the Olds Fire Department, we've left Wednesday evenings when they typically do their training. I'd have to get back to you on official numbers. I know I was the fourth one this morning. They're booked in 15-minute increments. So we're just launching that and getting staff used to it. Not everybody wants something up their nose, but we're trying to say it's really not too bad and encourage staff to participate. I did hear we had good uptake from Olds Fire and our CMP. So,
Director Andrew, do you have a bit more information on that end?
Yeah, so the program, again, just because it's just officially started last week, is in its somewhat infancy. Reporting numbers in this, we do have statistics that we have to provide to Alberta Health Weekly. And so there is some hesitation in us releasing this just because it is a medical test. And so there is some privacy there. So I'd be hesitant to release that information publicly, but I do believe that the compliance obviously in the program is paramount. And as it opens up, we've seen even in the last week, since early last week when the first session started, that we've had more opportunities to provide these tests. And AHS has given us the flexibility that we can operate outside of those scheduled windows for situations of benefit. So obviously shift work of emergency workers is a big one. And that's helped us be a little more effective by capturing, obviously with school exposures and things like that, there's lots of people worried and concerned. And so we've been able to help that with our essential workers.
Well, thank you very much, Director Andrew. Councillor Blatz.
if I could just add one more thing to that statement too.
Sure.
It's just for clarity. It's important to know that when we did our application, it was for Town of Olds essential working folks and our emergency services department. So we just want to know that, I want businesses to know that they can apply for the program. We could look at their application or, provide a bit of advice, but this program is strictly for, because of our application, Town of Olds people. Don't want to get that confused.
No, excellent point. Thank you. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to remind the general public and maybe perhaps our media as well that we have a lot of local businesses that are struggling, not only the restaurants. And I think it's very important that we as citizens try to support local as much as we possibly can during this time. And I think that we need to really focus on a lot of local businesses, and even for the restaurants, if you're not comfortable even dining outside, to perhaps do curbside pickup.
Very good point, Councillor Blatz. And another way, before you pick up or log on to Amazon, please maybe pick up the telephone and phone around to local businesses and see if the item you're looking for, shopping for, is available at a local business. And I'm sure they'd be more than happy to find a way to get it into your hands in a very safe manner, and probably a lot quicker than Amazon and those types of businesses. So please think of our local shop owners first. Excellent point, Councillor Blatz. All right, any other questions for on this report? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Councillor Overwater.
We did it.
Do we already have a motion?
We have motion.
We do? Oh, sorry. All right. So no more comments, questions, concerns. Then I'll call for a vote. All in favor and opposed. Thank you very much. All right, let's continue on. Business arising out of minutes, unfinished business. Oh, sorry. Yes. Mrs.
There's a proclamation.
Yes.
Sorry?
Proclamation for emergency management or emergency preparedness week.
Okay, that's not on. Separate. Okay,
Yeah,
yes,
it's
please.
below the delegation.
Yes. Okay, Councillor Blatz, since how you were unmuted, you could make that one.
All right. I move that Sunday, May 2nd, 2021 to Saturday, May 8th, 2021 be proclaimed as Emergency Preparedness Week in the Town of Olds.
Excellent, thank you. Comments, questions, concerns on that motion? Yes, Mr. Merritt.
Yeah, I just want to thank Jennifer, the whole emergency management team, and all those people that have become part of the team. We have a very extensive emergency management team in the town of Olds, which is going to serve us well through this pandemic, and it has for the last 14 months, and it will serve us well in any other emergency situation. Jennifer has certainly done yeoman's work to get us to where we're at with Brian Powell and Scott Chant. So I just want to thank them for this proclamation, but to remind people that we do have a very robust team, and we have been on top of the pandemic since day one. And so Jennifer, Scott, and Brian, if you're listening, thanks so very much.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. I will call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? And that motion is carried. Thank you very much for getting me online there, folks. All right. Now, let's go to business arising out of the minutes and new business. Or sorry, unfinished business. Any unfinished business? Seeing none, we'll move along to bylaws. Item 5A, CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. At the last council meeting on April the 12th, we had a public hearing in regards to the land use planning bylaw, and we passed the second reading of the bylaw as well. With that, there was a great discussion had. There was some suggestions of a couple of amendments. So those amendments are being proposed now for the third reading, and I'll hand it either off to Mr. Chant or Ms. Wright to basically speak to the amendments that have been made based on the council discussion of the past meeting.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll just pass it right on to Natasha Wright from PCPS with the two amendments that we're looking for after the second reading. So.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. So in the report, I'm not going to go over everything we heard at the public hearing last week. I'm only going to touch on the amendments that council had requested. So there were 2 points of discussion that council discussed at the previous meeting. So the first was adding an amendment to the bylaw that would address the required referral for new applications to adjacent landowners so that they would be able to submit comments prior to a decision being made. I'm not sure if you have the report or the amended version of the bylaw in front of you to have a look at those, but the proposed wording that we're looking at would say, prior to an application for a chicken coop being decided upon. Oh, there we go. So if you just want to scroll down to the second page. So there you can see a new clause I that would be added into part 3 of the proposed bylaw. So prior to an application for a chicken coop being decided upon, the development officer shall send a notice by mail to all assessed property owners of adjacent land. The notice shall be sent at least 14 days prior to the Municipal Planning Commission meeting date to decide on the application. And the notice must also include the date of the meeting. This is in order for the landowners to submit written comments or attend the meeting. And the development officer shall present all comments received to the Municipal Planning Commission for consideration. So that's wording for the first proposed amendment to address that referral. So in addition to requiring the development officer to send out a referral, it also puts requirements on what information must be included in it, and the fact that any comments that are received have to be forwarded to MPC so that they're aware and they can consider those in making a decision on the application. So for the second amendment, scroll down to page 3. This one was to address the quote-unquote grandfathering, or addressing the existing chicken coop structures that are already out there, and giving them more time to come into compliance with the proposed regulations. So the wording for this proposed amendment would be all new chicken coop structures constructed on or after April 27th of 2021 must meet the development standards outlined in section 619, which would contain the proposed regulations. And chicken coop type structures that are existing as of today's date shall have until January 1st, 2023 to meet the development standards of the section or be removed. So the importance of these two dates, today's date is April 26th. So if council does go ahead with these amendments and adopt this bylaw, any that are existing as of this date will have that additional year to come into compliance. Any new structures that are developed after today's date, so April 27th, they would need to meet the proposed development regulations at that time. So that should address those existing structures that we may or may not be aware of that don't meet the proposed regulations, and give them that additional time to fix their structures so that come January 1st, 2023, they do meet the proposed regulations. So that's the wording that's being proposed for the two amendments to address council's discussion at the previous meeting.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ms. Wright. May I start with a motion for third reading, please? Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that bylaw number 2021-02 to amend the land use bylaw as amended be given third reading.
Excellent.
And I do have a question and a comment, I guess. Yeah, thank you, through to Ms. Wright. Thank you, Ms. Wright, for making both of these changes, because I think that we had spoken quite a lot at length at our last council meeting with regards to this. And I just have one quick question for you, and that is on the first amendment that you have. It says shall, and I just want to make sure from your opinion, I guess, whether that opens it up for any kind of interpretation by a development officer who might look at saying, well, shall, does that mean must, or does that mean will? Is there any play there? I just want to make sure that we don't have, that we're very clear, and that we instruct our staff to make sure that this is happening, that they must go out and ask for comments from the adjacent landowners.
Okay, so shall is the strongest word that we have, and that does require the development officer to follow through on what the clause does state. So that would be requirements of them. There is no discretion in the word shall.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
All right. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, and thank you for that clarity, Natasha. I was going to ask that same question. I'm just very pleased to see this clause in here. I think it's very important with the somewhat controversial bylaw on either side, for or against, that the adjacent landowners are certainly notified when there's going to be one of these chicken coops going into their neighborhood. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
All right. Any further comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That motion carries. All right, thank you very much. Let's move along to the second portion of this particular issue, item 5B. CAO, did you want to quickly defer, or any
few words, but basically much like the past bylaw, bylaw 2021-04 was discussed at the April 12th council meeting. Again, there was a robust discussion on the topic, and a number of amendments were suggested. It was agreed that we wouldn't make any amendments at that meeting, but bring the amendments to this meeting here today, which we have, and I'll let Director Wagstaff bring the suggested amendments to you for your consideration and possible approval.
Thank you.
So we have added education course requirements to come with an application, and that an applicant must register their PID to have their application approved. Maximum licenses to the town to be given will be 40, and that's the 1 per 2. I don't have it right in front of me. I'll have to look it up. To 1 per 250 persons, and no person who keeps urban hens shall sell manure, meat or other products derived from an urban hen. So we have struck eggs from the current bylaw allowing for the sale of eggs. And responsibilities of owners keeping of urban hens. There was no changes at that point. So those were the four significant changes that were discussed at the last meeting and have been incorporated into the bylaw before you today.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Director Wagstaff. May I start with a motion, please? Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that bylaw 2021-04 Community Standards Amendment Bylaw be given third reading. And I do have a question comment, if I might.
Absolutely.
Being that we've really beat this up, and I do believe we asked this question earlier, but just for clarity, so I understand totally myself, throughout this process, the municipal enforcement officer was in fact involved with writing of this bylaw, and this bylaw it does give him the teeth to enforce it, correct? Him or whomever that's within the municipal enforcement.
Perhaps we should go directly to Sergeant Christensen, as I see he's joined our conversation.
Thank you. I believe the question was answered, but I just want to make sure that it is. I don't want to give us third reading and find out that, gee whiz, it's not worth it.
Like it. No, fair enough.
Through the chair to Councillor Blatz. I have reviewed the amendments and feel that it is enforceable at this time.
Excellent.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments.
Any addition, Director Andrew?
No, I'm quite happy the consultation was there, and Sergeant Christensen was involved right from the get-go, simply for that reason, because it was not a headache that I wanted to see us have to come back to afterwards as well. So I'm happy.
Excellent. Thank you. I believe I have Councillor Bennett, then Harper.
It came to my attention that the chicken coops that you can purchase, or that some people buy or build themselves, they're also used as rabbit hutches. So there would be no fees applicable to these coops / hutches because they're rabbits and not chickens. So there wouldn't have to be any kind of permit for their height, that structure, how many part you can have on a parcel. So I just wanted to bring that up and see if there's any information.
Okay. Don't know who wants to field that question. It'd probably
no,
be.
It's okay. We can discuss it at another meeting.
Yeah. It probably is more land use bylaw there. Mr. Merritt.
I just want to remind council that when we consulted here, we were bringing back the response to urban chickens. There may be further changes in regards to the community standards bylaw, and we are going to be bringing back some more changes to that in the next few months. Whether that's going to be captured by the discussion we had here, I can't answer it. I think we need to do a bit more investigation into it, but there will be an opportunity to address this, as you as council have said. These bylaws are living documents. We hope we solve it for a number of months to a year or so, but if there's a need to make adjustments, we will do it. But we have promised that we'd be returning the community standards bylaw back to council for a few other changes.
Well, I never thought of it either. It was just brought up and it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe none of us thought of that one. So, thank you.
And I think I have Councillor Harper and then Blatz.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to go back to one of the changes that we made an amendment, and that was the number of licenses per population. And under 6.54, there was consensus of 250 persons, one license per 250 persons. And that brings about a number of about 40 or more. And it probably will be more based upon a census by the federal government this year. I would certainly urge our council to change that for one license per 500. I hate to use the pun, but let's not let the barn door open way too soon or too long. It is a living document. If we find that the one per 500 is not enough, there's opportunities for people to be on a waiting list or make changes to the document later on. As Mr. Merritt has indicated, there will be changes to this document coming down the road within the next while anyways.
Okay. Well, I think we took a pretty strong straw poll at the time, last meeting when we did this, and I think council was quite clear in their direction. Did you want to propose an amendment now, Councillor Harper? Or
I would.
okay, then please make a motion and we'll vote on it.
I so move that the maximum number of urban hen licenses that may be issued shall be one urban hen license per 500 persons based on the population of the town of Walls as determined in the most recent municipal census.
All right. Thank you very much. Comments, questions, concerns regarding that motion? Councillor Ryan.
Well, thank you, Your Worship, and I understand where Councillor Harper's coming from. However, I think from our discussion last time, when we were looking at even the 500, we'd already thought that there was probably 20 chickens coops already in town, and that would not allow for any new licenses. And I think that's the reason why we decided to go to the 250. So I'm kind of, well, I understand wanting to try to limit it. I just don't think it would allow any opportunity for somebody new to come on board, and they would then, what would be the point of this entire exercise?
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Any other comments, questions, concerns before we vote on the proposed reduction? All right, seeing none. So we have a motion on the table to lower the number of licenses to approximately 20 as per 500, one per 500 persons in the town of Olds. And of course, that will fluctuate depending on the census and so forth. All in favor of that reduction? And opposed? All right, looks like the line of thinking from the other day is going to hold up. Thank you very much. All right, now we still do have the motion for third reading sitting on the table. Is there any? Yes, Councillor Blatz.
Well, just one thing I noticed here, and maybe it's not really very important, but under our table of contents on page 107, part 6, we have dogs and cats. That's it. But if you look at page 127 of our agenda package, it shows that we have dogs, cats, and chickens. It's just a housekeeping item. Does it need to be very explicit? Because I'm thinking if someone's looking this up online, you know, they're going to have difficulty trying to find it if they're looking for specific situations or specifically for chickens. So I'm asking the question, is it really important or is it not? I mean, to me, it should be part 6 should under the table of contents should be dogs, cats, and chickens, but that's
you are correct. That's a housekeeping piece that had not been caught to this point in the table of contents. Thank you.
Perfect. That's all I wanted to know. Thanks so very much.
We can rework the whole table of contents and make sure everything's captured. Those things are quite useful when.
Yes. Well, you know, our community standards bylaw is becoming quite large, and I think for the ease of finding it for people, I think we need to be as clear as we possibly can. So, and if this is a living document, it's probably going to come back to us, and maybe we're going to have to break out some of it into another bylaw at some point in time. That's just my thoughts.
Yep.
Thank you for that.
All right. Any further comments, questions, concerns before we vote on third reading? Seeing none. Mr. Merritt, did you have your hand up before Councillor Blatz?
No, just Councillor Blatz had asked to speak to this before going to the vote, so I just wanted to make sure you saw that she was still wanting to speak.
Good enough.
Thank you.
All right, so we do have the motion on the table. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? All right, that motion carries. Thank you very much, everybody. That's item 5B. Let's continue moving along and get into item 5C, CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to hand this to Director Lindeman in regards to the passing of our property tax and supplementary tax bylaw.
Excellent.
Thank you. So the 2021 tax rate bylaw is being presented today for all three readings. This bylaw covers both the 2021 annual property taxes as well as the 2021 supplementary property taxes. And I'm going to apologize right now because my neighbor apparently is doing his lawn right now for the background noise. The municipal rates being presented today are a 0% increase over 2020. Assessment values have increased for residential properties by 1.65% and decreased for non-residential properties by 2.72%. So while the municipal tax rates have remained the same, the fluctuations in assessment have caused an increase for the average residential property of approximately $30 for the municipal portion and a decrease for the average non-residential property of approximately $206. Again, this is to the municipal portion of the property taxes. The education property tax, which the municipality collects on behalf of the province, has increased by 1.8% in total. Just to quickly explain the requisition for the education property tax, the province requisitions municipalities based on assessment from 2 years ago, but the municipality has to apply this requisition across assessment based from last year. So breaking that down, the 2021 education property tax is requisitioned to the municipality from the province based on assessment from 2019, but is applied to taxpayers based on assessment from 2020. This can cause huge fluctuation in taxes dependent on what happens to assessments in either of those years. So unfortunately, this is the case for non-residential properties in 2021. The average non-residential property will see an increase to the education portion of their property taxes of approximately $854. I will remind council that the opposite of this scenario happened in 2020, where non-residential properties saw a large decrease to their education property taxes for the same reasoning with the tax years. So this is the unfortunate side of having taxes calculated based on two different assessment years. Residential properties will see a decrease to their education property taxes of $48. The Mountain View Seniors Housing requisition, which again the town collects on behalf of seniors housing, has increased by 2.14%. This is an increase of approximately $7 for the average residential property and $5 for the average non-residential property. So in closing, the average residential property between these three taxes will see an overall decrease of $11, and the average non-residential property will see an overall increase of $651. And with that, I will open it up to any questions council may have.
Thank you very much, Director Linderman. May I start with a motion for first reading, Councillor Overwater?
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the tax rate bylaw 2021-07 is given first reading. My comment is that, you know, I think we as council and administration, we've done the best that we can with our you know, tax portion, you know, having a 0% tax increase. And there's really nothing we can do when the province downloads the educational tax to us. And, you know, we find that really hard for our residents as well, because at the end of the day, the residents look at the bottom line on their tax notice and they see that it's gone up substantially and figure that it's all coming to the town of Olds. So, you know, I just want to make sure that our residents all understand that you know, we have a 0% tax increase, yet we have no control over the educational taxes and or any other requisitions we get. So we just have to collect it and send it off onward to someone else. So when residents are looking at their tax notices, please make sure that you look at what actually comes to the town of Olds, which I think is about what, 67 cents or 68 cents per on every dollar. So, you know, you have to really think about that what we're doing with that 67 cents, we do quite a lot with. So just a comment there, Mr. Mayor Worship Michael.
Excellent point. I was going to point that out as well. Yes, just in the residential end alone, it's 29% goes directly to the education tax, and yes, we collect it and we look like the bad guys, but I mean it's something that happens every year. So thank you for pointing it out. All right, any further comments, questions, Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Your Worship. I also just want to say good job to Sheena for putting all together our budgets and keeping us all in line. It's great for us to be able to have a 0% tax increase, and I believe it's the second year in a row here. You know, and what Councilor Wadi said is very true. I want to also say that as council's rep on the Mountain View Seniors Housing, we actually did not increase the rate. The rate increased for Olds simply because our assessments went up, not because we increased the rate and the amount of money collected. In fact, we actually was able to reduce that slightly this year. And unfortunately, Olds is the only community that is actually increased because of our assessments going up and the other communities' assessments did not. So I just wanted to make sure we pointed that out.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Ryan. And Director Linderman also, we saw earlier in today's agenda that the full end cycle of a budget process is our audit. And congratulations on passing that with flying colors. Yet again, every year it seems to be that the auditors walk through the door and they're very, very impressed with the processes you have implemented. And this process, I have to say, right from service level review all the way to the end of audit is very, very well done by all of your staff. And Mr. Merritt, thank you as well. And all the directors, they work tirelessly on this process, and it's the cornerstone of what we do here at the municipality. So thank you very much, everybody. All right. Any further comments, questions, concerns? We have a motion for first reading. Seeing no more hands waving dramatically, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? And opposed? All right, that motion is carried. May I have a motion for second reading? Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the tax rate bylaw 2021-07 is given second reading.
Thank you so much. Comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? And that carries. Motion carried. Motion for unanimous reading. Councillor Thompson, you were a very close second to Councillor Ryan last time.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council give unanimous consent for presentation of the third reading of tax rate bylaw 2021-07.
Excellent, thank you. Comments, questions, concerns regarding this motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's unanimous. That motion carries. May I have a motion for third reading, please? Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the tax rate bylaw 2021-07 is given third and final reading.
Excellent. Last chance for a comment. Seeing none, I'll call for the votes. All in favor? And opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, everybody. All right, that brings us to the end of bylaws. Let's keep plugging away. New business, item 6A, CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. Last July, we brought forth a report to council in regards to the Local Authorities Election Act and violations of that act. Since then, we basically performed the legislative duties that the municipality must follow to ensure that the acts are followed, both the Local Authorities Election Act and the Municipal Government Act. We now have a final report to provide, and I'll ask our legislative clerk / returning officer to speak to the final report.
Hi, it's Marcy. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, just making sure. As you can see in the agenda package, on the RFD, I have noted the summary of the failure to file campaign disclosure statements, the obligations we were faced as a municipality, as I saw them as the RO, the returning officer. Excuse me. I came to learn quite quickly that this was precedent setting, that with the legislation being new in 2018, that this had not been done yet. I would say that it was very confusing because there was two acts, the Municipal Government Act and the Local Authorities Election Act, that both had to be interpreted and both speak to regulations and requirements. And our legal advisors, our municipal affair advisors, and Elections Alberta both were initially, when I saw guidance, definitely had to look into stuff and get back to me, because this, like I said, was all precedent setting. Some of the stuff I would say that we dealt with were preparing documents that didn't exist, so templates and creating stuff to notify the candidates. There was I feel a lot of extra work on the municipality that at this point, now that it's all done, we have our letter that says, thanks for bringing it to our attention, and the matter has been concluded. So it seems like a lot of work for an obligation on a municipality is, I guess, my wrap of the whole thing. And I would be open to any questions.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Legislative Clerk. And you're so very right. This was an onerous task that you were obligated to take on behalf of the municipality, and we appreciate your extra work. Thank you. May I start with the first motion, please? Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council accept the administration's final update on the July 13th, 2020 report to council as contained in the request for decision for information and further.
Thank you very much. Any comments, questions, concerns? Councillor Thompson.
Yes, Your Worship. I would just like to thank the municipality for the work they did to follow good process. In this scenario, it was found that I had not made an infraction that would not make me eligible to run for election, and this report does state that. And again, I'd like to thank the municipality for the work they put into this.
All right, Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I just want to commend Marcy and Monica or our legislative clerk and our communications clerk, who acted as returning officers in the by-election, and the hard work that they did put into it, and knowing that Marcy does follow the letter of the law to a T. I commend her and Monica both for their work. And I just want to note it that 5 of the 7 candidates did get it right and did follow the process that Marcy did lay out for them. So I think that Marcy deserves some kudos for all the hard work she did.
Very right, Councillor Blatz. And even though the letter states that there was relief given by the Court of Queen's Bench, this, in my mind, was a violation. Although you were giving relief, Miss Councillor Thompson, it was clear that you did not make the deadline. And yes, a judge has given you relief, but at the same time, you did violate the law. Councillor Thompson, then Overwater, then Harper.
I think, Your Worship, we always want to be careful of comments we make in public. And I think the statement on the report is very clear. So I'd ask you to apologize for your statement.
This deadline, you were given relief by the court. Those both are true facts. Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, at the end of the day, the initial filing was late. No matter what you want to say, it was late. You asked for relief from the Court of Queen's Bench. They did give that to you. Yes, it's very well stated there. However, this is setting a precedent, and I would like people to realize that this is like a bylaw. So when we, as council, make bylaws and such, our residents are expecting us to follow the bylaws and so on and so forth, and not just change it because we're setting a precedent. I mean, this is setting a precedent for that Court of Queen's Bench, which is not good. And I personally would like to send a letter from council to say, you know what, you are setting a precedent, and if you're going to put dates in there, then follow them. Otherwise, don't put those dates in there. At the end of the day, they didn't do right.
All right, Councillor Harper and then Thompson.
Thank you. As it's noted in the report, Mr. Thompson failed to file his campaign disclosure, and Court of Queen's Bench did in fact do a consideration and upon application and forgave that. And I just wanted to note further that the other candidate, Mr. Dobush, did not go through that process. And the consequence of not going through that process is he is not eligible to seek election. I don't have the number. I've lost the page. I think for 3 years.
3 years, I believe, yes.
Yeah. So, the consequences are serious, and it's duly noted to that. And it is precedent setting in reference to Court of Queen's Bench.
Yeah. CAO before?
Yeah, I would just like to talk about it being precedent setting. It was precedent setting in regards to this is the first violation of this change in the act that has occurred. That does not mean that this precedent has to be followed by future courts in regards to the Courts of Queen Bench. It's that will be up to each individual situation. I believe that's the direction we had heard returning officer.
Absolutely. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. And in my comments, I wasn't calling anyone out in administration or making a negative comment. I was simply stating that in this instance, I was called to task for not completing a report. I went to court and I shared why I had acted the way I had and under what grounds, and the courts saw fit to side with me. The case personally cost me $13,000 when the matter could have been addressed with a simple courtesy phone call earlier. So I think there are several ways that this could have been handled better. And I'd ask, what was the cost to the municipality for this this action?
Mr. Merritt, would you like to speak to that? We'll get to Councillor Bennett in a second.
No, I'm not prepared to speak to the cost, although I will provide it at some point in time. And it'll probably only be the legal costs because I cannot consider all the costs of the administration on this. I just want to reiterate it that we had followed the process from a legislative point of view, and there's not much we could do to change it other than hopefully that there will be some changes made to the act into the future to maybe put in deadlines and things of that nature. But the administration followed the act, and we must follow the act in regards to both the Municipal Business Act and the Local Authorities Election Act.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Merritt. Councillor Bennett.
I would just like to reiterate that Mr. Thompson swore to an affidavit indicating that he read, pardon me, and understood numerous sections of that. So basically you signed and it wasn't true. So there you go. The first one that came about was that, yes, I understand, and I signed, and then it wasn't correct. So
All right.
you
Thank you
basically
very much.
lied to an affidavit.
Yes. Closing comments, Councillor Thompson.
No.
Yeah, Your Worship, the last words I heard were, I think you lied to an affidavit. So, Your Worship, I would just say point of order.
I don't think she said the word lie. She said that you.
No, I did. No, yeah, you swore an affidavit that you agreed and read everything and understood it.
Yeah.
And that was not true.
You didn't end up following through on the affidavit, so.
That's right.
I don't know what I can help you with there, Mr. Thompson, or Councillor Thompson.
There you go.
Councillor Overwater, then Blatz.
Yeah, a final comment is that, you know what, at the end of the day, it did cost you money, Councillor Thompson, because of your own decision as to not to follow the procedure that was given to you. However, at the end of the day, Mr. Merritt and Sheena, I'm sure will come up with what it has cost the taxpayers of the town of Olds for the administrative costs for them to put in all the time and effort, because this was a precedent-setting situation. There was more time and effort that was put into it. And, you know, it probably cost our taxpayers a lot of money. And I think you were giving ample opportunity, whether it was by written notice or by phone calls, to make it right, and you didn't do it. That's just what happened. And you got off very, for lack of better words, lucky. The courts are very busy, and I don't think they put the time and energy into it because it was a precedent-setting matter.
Just by way of other precedent, just north of us in Innisfail, councillor was hit with a code of conduct violation that he knew about, and he actually reimbursed the municipality the costs.
Yeah, he did.
Perhaps something to consider for Councillor Thompson. I have Councillor Blatz, then back to Councillor Thompson and Councillor Harper.
I was just going to say, call the question.
Okay, all right.
I put a motion on the floor.
We do have a motion on the floor. Ready, I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? That motion's carried. So we do have a motion on the floor that we will continue with. I will call for the vote on that one. All in favor? And opposed? That motion carries as well. We do have one more motion on the RFD on page 156. May I have a motion for that? Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Worship. I move that council accept the election commissioner's notice of investigation outcome correspondence dated April 13th, 2021, which concludes the investigation.
Excellent, thank you. Comments, questions, concerns on this motion? Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to say that from the town's point of view, we didn't really have any choice but to follow through, because this is an act, and we had to follow the two different acts in order to do this, and we didn't have any choice with regards to having even our legislative clerk and our returning, who is also our returning officer, do the work. I think it's, regardless of how much it costs the town, we just didn't have any choice of spending that money and having lawyers provide information. So as far as I'm concerned, that's a moot point. We were sort of told this is what we have to do, and we had to follow through.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, Your Worship, I don't know if that's a comment that I agree with. I think the municipality knew well in advance of the deadlines, and I think the courts have heard all of these things. So I would just question that statement.
As you swore you did too. Mr. Merritt.
I would prefer that this conversation get closed down, because I'm going to tell you that administration followed the letter of the law here. We did everything that we were supposed to do, and I'm not getting into the details of what municipal affairs, our legal team, or what the commissioner would say, but I would say no one would have faulted the process that was followed by legislative clerk / returning officer. And I'm not going to comment on legal processes because that's for legal people to deal with.
Excellent. All right, with your permission, Councillor Harper, I'll call for the vote.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. All in favor? And opposed? That motion carries. All right, let's move along to item 6B, CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship, and this is a proclamation on National Nursing Week of May 10th through 16th. Considering all the issues that frontline people have gone through, especially the nursing associations and the nurses of our community, of our province, of our country, I think this is a very important proclamation, and I'll ask Director Wagstaff to speak to it.
As the CEO indicated, this certainly has come to the forefront in light of the last year of all the work that healthcare workers have been under in some of the stresses in some of the most trying of times when we're in a health crisis. With that, last year, Councillor Blatz had brought this forward, and the council agreed to return this year with a proclamation that would recognize National Nursing Week in the town of Olds.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Director Wagstaff. May I start with a motion, please? Councillor Blatz.
Thank you very much. And thank you for remembering this, Director Wagstaff. I move that the week of May 10th to 16th, 2021 be proclaimed as National Nursing Week in the town of Olds.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? Motion is carried. All right. Let's keep moving along. Item 7A, reports from council, boards, and committees. May I start with a motion to begin with? I usually go top left to right, but let's mix it up and I'll go bottom right to left. Councillor Ryan, you are in my bottom right-hand corner. Would you care to make a motion to begin with and then give us your report?
I will. Thank you very much, Your Worship. I almost never get to start. I move that the reports from council authorities, boards, committees, and commissions ending April 26, 2021 be received for information. And just to let everybody know, I provided a written report that Marcy can add to the agenda. A couple of highlights I want to make would be, Alberta Seniors and Community Housing Association, our conference. There was 2 resolutions that were put to the floor, both of them from Mountain View Seniors Housing, and both of them were passed and a fairly good margin. If anybody wants to have some more details on what these resolutions mean and what they are, I can provide that later, but I didn't want to get into extreme detail in a report and bore you guys to death. Also, town hall. The town hall was also during the conference, and it was very interesting with Dr. Hinshaw talking about perhaps lessening restrictions for continuing care centers because of all the residents already being given their first and second shots, including the facilities that are run by the Mountain View Seniors Housing. All of our lodges have received those shots. All the people in our lodges have received those shots. The staff are getting shots, and we'll be finding out what kind of percentages that's going to be. But in the meantime, I think that the government is recognizing that the vaccinations are well underway for our seniors, and perhaps a lessening of some of the restrictions there might be in order. And I'm hoping to hear something from her from later this week. Everything else, you know, is all written there. So if anybody has any questions, just give me a shout. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Councillor Ryan. I have Councillor Blatz next in my rotation.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did email my written report this morning, and I really have nothing more to add to it this time.
All right. Thank you very much.
And I did email Marcy as well, included her.
Yeah, we'll get that included in the next appropriate
Sure.
agenda package. Councillor Bennett is next.
Mine's attached already with the council agenda, so anyone wants to read it, it's there already. And I don't have to add to it right now. Thank you.
Excellent. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I attended the ad hoc committee on the Code of Conduct, the regular and policies and priorities meetings of council, the AUMA Spring Leaders Caucus, the Mountain View Recreational Master Plan meeting, and the Age-Friendly Workshop, as well as the Municipal Planning Commission meeting this month. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Harper.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just a couple of highlights. I attended pretty well everything that others have mentioned already today, but I did attend the Water Commission Annual General Meeting. Councillor Overwater attended that meeting as well. The board, it's in their regular meeting, has been reviewing personnel policies, and they will come back to the board for next month. Just to let you know that spring runoff to date has been very, very low, and they're indicating that the snowpack is very low up in the mountains, so not to expect too much in reference to changes in water quality coming through the water line over the next while. The board has also passed bylaws to keep up with the new legislation returning in reference to commissions, and attended the Olds Chamber strategic planning session and their regular board meeting. They are looking at sending out a survey to members in reference to beta testing of a special Alberta Chamber e-commerce website. I look forward to that. And of course, attended the Cape Economic meeting on Friday, and it was great to hear all the good news stories across our region, including ourselves.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Harper. Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I attended many of all the same meetings as everyone else. Also attended the age-friendly session, which I think at the end of the day, we as council, and I know I'm a big proponent of this, of going to the Alberta government about getting money for transportation. I feel that I think we're going to work on a resolution that at the end of the day, not just cities need transportation for all of their citizens, but we and smaller urban communities need that as well. So hopefully we can get that in. I think resolutions have to be in by June 30th or something like that. And it's not only just for older people, it's for younger people as well. Attended SEWA, and SEWA is working on their next steps moving forward. The recreational master plan was very interesting as to what our council thinks our priorities should be and where some of the multiplexes should be. And I think, you know, we had a pretty good consensus that, you know, people have to learn to drive to places. People drive an hour in the city. And I think we in these small urban communities, you know, sometimes 5 minutes we think is too long. So I think if we're going to get a multiplex of any sort, it needs to be somewhere in the county where people drive, and we can get some high level of sports projects going on here. Also attended, yes, the AGM with Councillor Harper, and yeah, the snowpack is down, and I know she mentioned possibly we should look at you know, maybe looking at talking about conserving some water in our watering habits in the town of Olds. Also attended the 3 half-day sessions of Municipal Leaders Caucus. I won't go into that. Everybody spoke about that. Attended MPC. We approved a home beauty spa. We approved a Sec Fabric shed, and which is a a big building to house a motorhome of some sort. A CCAN for a hydro dig company over in Imperial area. And we denied a fence over in Imperial that would extend out in front of the house by 45 feet. That was against our land bylaw use, so we denied that. Give you an update on that. The Brownlee Synergy, the Trailblazing of Women was very informative. It was very interesting listening to the one of the first female police officers, what she had to go through in a male-dominated society. It was quite interesting. And then also another trailblazing woman that she went in for an engineer, and again that was a male-dominated organization that she worked her way through, and she proved herself. And so it was interesting, those two. I judged the Air Cadets 185, their regional speeches this time, and I'm proud to say that our warrant officer number 1, Annie, was the winner, and she will carry on to provincials. And then hopefully she's very dynamic. She's just got public speaking down, and I'm sure she will move on to the national. She was very good. Cape, I know some of you attended that, and I hope it was a good session for you. I was not there. I was at a different meeting that day. Cape's annual general meeting will be June 23rd. You will all get an invite for that as well. Attended the Alberta Association of Police Governance, their online virtual conference. It was interesting. Curtis Zablocki, Deputy Commissioner, talked about RCMP working on better communication and consultation with the communities, and hopefully with us having a police advisory committee started up, that we will be able to do that as well. Minister Casey Madu brought comments on working towards the police force educating and fairness to everyone, working on an inclusive justice for all. He talked about the Fair Deal panel report, which had a recommendation of having a provincial police force for Alberta. Hopefully, I think we should get that report out the end of sometime in the late fall. And in there, he also talked about rule of law, maintain order, and people feel safe and protected in their communities is a priority for the government of Alberta, whether it's RCMP or provincial police force. They're also reviewing the Police Act. There were speakers talking on making sure the police see the person. When they go to situations, they want to make sure that the police see the person and not the disorder, because a lot of the actions are related to mental health. So that was a big topic for that as well. We also learned some protocols to implement in our advisory committee. One of the statements was fear of crime is as bad as the crime itself. And I think that's right. I mean, I think there's a lot of rural people that, with the rural crime rate that was going on, they were very fearful of being the next victim. So that was, quite an interesting statement. The Alberta Association for Police Governance is looking to host a community or a conference in 2023. And I talked to our facilitator, Jen Lutz. There's about 150 people that attend that. And I have the information. I think that would be something that maybe the town of Olds should entertain. It would probably be in person by then. So I'm looking forward to maybe being there for that. Also, it was just a very busy month. Mountain View Waste Management Commission will be having their AGM on April 30th. I will make sure I send out the agenda and the credentials for everyone to be there. And that's about it right now. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Councillor Overwater. You are absolutely correct. It was a very, very busy month for everybody. I, of course, attended many of the things listed below. I'd like to talk about a couple of things that aren't specifically ABCs, but some things happened over the past month that again showed the true colors of our administration here at the town of Olds. We had the AHS and Government of Alberta brought down some heavier restrictions on restaurants and gyms again. And I'd like to thank our administration for the pivot and the ability to approve temporary patios for our restaurants. They took the bull by the horns. There was a point where if some of these restaurants had their application in by sort of 10:30 in the morning, they were getting same day approval. And that is a monumental task. We do have to thank AHS and the Alberta Gaming and Liquor people. They helped along the way, but this was no small task by our administration. And Mr. Merritt, Director Chant, thank you so much for taking that bull by the horns and getting that done. The other issue that sort of cropped itself up that was a little trying was our railway crossing at Highway 27 and the train tracks. The crew from CP Rail had left it in a less than desirable state when they were finished doing the repairs that they needed to do. And again, Director Chant reached out, and the administration here at the Town of Olds reached out, and in relatively fast time got that fixed up, and it looks like $1 million out there now. And I know some councillors had hoped that we had the slowdown lane that it had created, but I'm glad it's fixed because it'll stop people's cars from being damaged. So two great kudos to our administration. Thank you so much for taking care of those issues that cropped up unexpectedly, and you pivoted very quickly and got the job done. Thank you. All right, so we have a motion on the table. Unless anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns, I'll call for the vote. Seeing none, I'll do just that. All in favor and opposed? Excellent. That motion passes and we can move along. Item 9A, CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the kind words in regards to the CP Rail and the Planning and Development Department. Credit goes to the staff of Planning and Development and Mr. Chant. And I know Mr. Chant spent more time in regards to the CP Rail than it's known to make sure the fix was done right, and it certainly was done right. So thank you, Mr. Chant, for taking the time to work with Transportation and CP Rail to ensure that the job was done the way it should have been. In regards to correspondence, the town of Bowden sent out correspondence that they're hoping to have the Bowden Days Parade happen on July 17th. They've indicated that this is dependent on COVID, but they're hopeful by this time that they'd be able to do it. The IODE Alberta chapter indicated that it's National Volunteer Week, which we have celebrated in the town of Olds, and I think that's very important, and they've sent a newsletter with that information, so I wish that people would read that. The third piece of correspondence is from Alberta Justice and Solicitor General's Office and Minister Madu, responding to a letter by the Town Council previously in regards to some concerns that they basically want to relay in regards to policing and the RCMP/Provincial Police Department, although open mind is still available on all these items. The next three items are thank yous from Aidan Hoffman, Amelia Hoffman, and Lise Marie Hoffman in regards to scholarships that we provided, and they wanted to thank the council for providing these opportunities to these three individuals. The next item is the High River Mayor, Craig Snodgrass, wrote into the province in regards to the Eastern Slopes coal exploration and public consultation. Again, this continues to evolve even since that letter was sent. And the town basically has responded to the Eastern Slopes asking for more consultation. So it is taking place, it appears. The next item is a newsletter from the Red Deer River Municipal Users Group, MUGS. And you heard earlier today the importance of the newsletter, but also they're highlighting the hike as regards to the Olds and District Hospice Society, the great work that they do, and their presentation today. So those are the correspondence that were provided to council over the past 2 weeks.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Merritt. And one final plug for the Hospice Society, that virtual hike for hospice is May 2nd, this Sunday coming up at 9:30 p.m. You can find them at oldshospice.com. And please be generous. They're a fantastic organization in our town, do great work. May I start with a motion, please? Or did I get a motion already? No, Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the correspondence and information report ending April 26, 2021 be received for information.
Excellent. Comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And opposed? Motion is carried. All right, so we do have one closed session item that we need to go through. Again, I will read my little thing. If you want to continue in, the public can continue in with our meeting. We're going to go into a closed session. You can do continue one of two ways. You can click leave the meeting button and then watch our Town of Olds website and Facebook page for live updates as to when council will return. And at that point in time, administration will log you back into our session, or you can stay online in the virtual meeting and administration will put you into a waiting room and then watch again our website and our Facebook page for when we'll be back. And they will bring you back directly. You won't have to log in or anything like that to rejoin the meeting when we come back to a regular session. So at this point in time, may I have a motion to go to a closed session? Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council goes to closed session under FOIP section 16, disclosure harmful to business interests of a third party. And I'm not sure who you all want as part of this.
Mr.
Mayor.
I would like for the executive team to be part of this and the legislative clerk.
So Director Wagstaff, Director Chant, Director Linderman, Director Andrews, and Legislative Clerk?
Yes.
And yourself, CAO?
Yes.
Excellent. Questions, comments, concerns on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? Motion is carried. All right. That's it? That's it? We'll call today's meeting back to order. We do have a rise and report. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, Your Worship. I would move that council direct the mayor and chief administrative officer to finalize and sign an agreement with the Mountain View Emergency Shelter Society to enter into a long-term lease as an option for the society to lease from the town the northeastern portion of the lands with the municipal address of 5001-52 Street.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That motion carries. Excellent. Okay, I know it isn't on our agenda and it wasn't added, but it's just been brought to my attention that we have AHS update with regards to senior housing. So I will go to Councillor Ryan, who is our rep on the Mountain View Seniors Housing Board, and have a little bit of an update.
Yep, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to update because I mentioned in my report that I expected Dr. Hinshaw to come up with something this week with regards to relaxation, and it just came across on my phone with regards to that. So just give you a brief thing, not a huge amount of relaxation, but might have some significance to our seniors, and that is they've agreed to for indoor social visits can now go up to 4 visitors. We'll be able to resume again as long as they are from the same household. So you can have 4 instead of before it was only 1 or 2. Outdoor social visits in these facilities can expand up to 10 people, and residents may name up to 4 designated family support persons for unrestricted access. So there's more details in the report, but that's just really brief. But so those allow people who are living in these designated facilities to have more visitors on their list, because I know that just for example, my mom, she could only have myself and my sister-in-law were the only ones on her list. So my husband couldn't visit, or my brother, or whatever. So it does allow for more visitation and hopefully a little bit more freedom for our seniors. Thank you for allowing the update.
Well, we'll consider that an addendum to your report from
Thank you.
these boards and committees. Thank you very much, Councillor Ryan. I believe that that's the end of our agenda, so I would entertain an adjournment motion. There, Councillor Overwater wins the race. All in favor? Have a great week, everybody.
Yes, thank you. You as well.
You too. Thank you.